another episode of the More Than a Game podcast. Thank you for joining us. It's great to have you with us. My name is Dan Walls, and I'm just a guy who loves basketball, loves the sport. And my aim with this podcast is to interview people involved with the sport of basketball in Australia, to hear their stories, and out of those stories, maybe grab onto some key nuggets of truth and life lessons that we can take into our lives and learn, and as we hear and listen to their stories as well. Today on the podcast, we're going to be talking leadership. We're going to be talking Michael Jordan, LeBron James. We're going to be talking about Australian basketball and the state of the game. And with me today to do that is a three-time NBL champion, a man who's captained the Sydney Kings. He captained his country, played for the Australian Boomers at 2 Olympics. And I'm talking of none other than Jason Smith. Jason, welcome to the More Than a Game podcast. Thanks for joining us, mate.
Absolute pleasure and good to reconnect, Dan.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Great to see you. Well, first up, you've been retired now for 11 years. 2009, you retired. What have you been up to since you've retired?
And it seems like it was about 40 years ago. But look, I've got I had 2 young kids when I retired, so life kind of revolved around them, and then seeking employment, and in the next stage of life, moved to Melbourne. I'm from Melbourne originally. My father was quite ill, so we decided to move to get a little bit closer to him and help out there with family. So my wife Carla and the kids packed up Sydney and moved to Melbourne to start afresh down here. And yeah, it seems like it was literally yesterday, and it was like 10 years ago. So
yeah,
gone by pretty quick.
Yeah, what do you do for work these days?
Well, I was in banking when I retired, so I moved straight into full-time work with Macquarie Bank, and then I was there for about a year, and then I think GFC happened. So I kept my role there, but they let go about 2,000 staff.
Oh, yeah.
And so I just kind of realised it wasn't an organisation I really wanted to work for, to be honest.
Yeah, sure.
So then I got a call to move across to Commonwealth Bank and just moved my way through Commonwealth Bank for the next 9-10 years, and became an executive manager in their commercial bank down in Melbourne.
Yeah,
managing a pretty significant portfolio, and that was a couple of years ago. And I moved. I left the bank and started with a software company called Domo, and I knew nothing about software.
Yeah.
But they needed someone to assist, I guess, their go-to-market strategy, and my business knowledge helped me secure a role with them. So I've been with them ever since. So yeah, data and analytics. So yeah, it's an unusual space to be in, but I'm loving it.
Yeah, that's great to hear, mate. The reason I ask you that is just touching on retirement. I met you when I think I was 16 years of age, so I was pretty young. I was up and coming basketball. I wanted to.
You look exactly the same, by the way.
Thanks, mate. I appreciate that. As do you. We haven't changed much. But I remember coming through, playing basketball myself, wanted to make it. But hearing your story, you're a man of faith from the outset. We'll speak about that later on. But looking at you and how you had a purpose outside of basketball, really gave me an understanding that, it showed me the importance of having a purpose outside of your career or basketball or whatever you're sort of sowing your life into, whether that be fatherhood or being a good husband, whatever the case may be. You see players these days really struggle with retirement. As soon as they hit retirement, their lives go downhill a little bit. How important is it to have that sense of purpose outside of your basketball career, sporting career, or career in general?
Yeah, good question. Look, for me, I had a 5-year plan. When I turned 30, I knew I was probably at the precipice or height of my career, and that things would start to go downhill from there, just from a physical point of view. And so I worked out a bit of a plan around educating myself, gaining some experience and some exposure into the environment I potentially saw a career in. So I started reaching out, and I was lucky, when you're in that current environment, playing for the Kings, you can get the attention of pretty much anyone, which was really beneficial. So I'd lent into relationships and opened some doors into conversations that allowed me to get some exposure and experience within some corporate organisations. So I worked part time for the last 5 years of my career. So one day a week during the season, which was my recovery day. So I negotiated with the club and the coach and said, you got to trust me to do the right things from my body. I'll do the recovery by myself, but I need this time to start building some business assets that I can utilise when I retire.
Yeah.
And then I went back to uni and did my masters at Sydney. And so when I retired, I was equipped to move into the next stage a hell of a lot easier than what you would see. A lot of guys don't have that that skill set, so it becomes really, really difficult. You've got to start somewhere from the bottom up.
Yeah.
Or at least I had some skills and education to facilitate moving into mid level. And not starting from really low salary and just not really enjoying it. I was challenged immediately and supported as well within the organisations that I worked for, and I quickly navigated my way through. But in saying that, my faith played a huge part in that too. Understanding that there's seasons in life, and this was coming to a close. And a new one was opening, and I was excited for that. But I still, so I did all the preparation that I could, 5 years. I had a faith background that really supported me go through that process as well. But I still think I had probably 2 or 3 years of depression.
Yeah.
As soon as I transitioned across, and just missing that, I guess that camaraderie, the closeness of building the teams, having a team orientation, goal orientation environment was very different than what I found in corporate life. So it was hard. It was really hard. But I'd hate to think how people experience that without a faith background to support you through that, but also the 5 years of work that I did previously to prepare me for it. So. Look, it's. I mean, for me, and you'll find most athletes, is that they're incredibly competitive, and they're up for the challenge, and they need to be motivated. And if they can find an environment where it can provide those elements, then they'll typically flourish. But if those elements aren't provided, then I can understand why there's a spiral, and it's typically in the wrong direction.
Yeah, absolutely. So important to have that sense of structure too, I guess. And something you touched on there was our team environment, having those disciplines you're coming into just about every day, training, game situation, that sort of thing. I was going to ask you this later on, but I'll come to it now. You no doubt would have watched The Last Dance, the Bulls documentary. I just want to touch on something that Michael Jordan speaks about in terms of leadership, because I know, you're a captain for the Sydney Kings and a leader within your own right. But this is what he says in The Last Dance. And I'm referring to this in terms of transferable skills from your career into your workplace now into everyday life. He says, leadership has a price. So I pulled people along when they didn't want to be pulled. I challenged people when they didn't want to be challenged. I earned that right because my teammates came after me. They hadn't done all the things that I had to endure. I needed the team to play to the standard I play the game, and I wasn't going to take anything less. Now, if that meant I had to go and get up someone a little bit, then I did that. He obviously used more flowery, colourful language than that. But he says, one thing you will hear from my teammates is that that Michael Jordan, referring to himself, never asked me to do something that I didn't go and do myself. My question around that is, does that kind of leadership resonate with you? We all know what a great player he was, and I didn't really understand more. We obviously got a picture or an understanding more of his personality and what he was like on the court through that documentary. But can you relate to that sort of sense of leadership, or is leadership broader than that, or is it something bigger than that Michael Jordan refers to there?
No, I think it's pretty accurate in his reflection, and I was fortunate enough to play alongside Luke Longley. So I remember asking him, intimately around his experiences with MJ and particularly around his leadership capabilities and what he would lean into to try and draw the best out of his players. But yeah, I mean, I was a little bit different. I wasn't a great player initially, so I had to work really hard in order to become more solidified in the team and respected on the team. And that was probably a 7-year journey as a pro. And then things started to shift for me. But so I totally relate to what he's saying in that, because my competitive nature on the court too. So I would get up guys if I didn't feel that they were bringing their A game every single day. I used to love training every day. I loved the training. I loved competing, and I loved competing at a high level. So when I saw guys that weren't participating at the expectation, then I felt it was my obligation to ensure that everyone trained at a certain standard, because we're all trying to get better. And if we're training at 80% capacity, then that's the way we're going to always be. But if we're training and bordering on our best every single day, then our best gets higher and higher and higher, and our ceiling becomes higher and higher and higher as well. So yeah, I mean, I've the amount of fights that I've had, and not that I'm saying that I'm proud of that, but just because you're competitive and you challenge guys and it gets physical. And so when you told that story about fighting with Steve Kerr, I've got 50 of those, and I'm sure Michael and God, those guys, I love those guys. Walk off in your arm in arm, and you call them up, and it's like it was yesterday that we were competing against each other. And but there's a respect for each other, that you're able to achieve things that other teams didn't achieve. First team to three-peat, and that's not easy. That's extremely difficult. Yeah. And we're able to do that because we had a like-mindedness and a determination that could, help us get across the line. So yeah, I mean, so I'm hoping that answered the question. But I admired him for what he said, because I could relate exactly to how he articulated it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my sense is that sort of leadership doesn't translate into everyday life in a corporate career. So is it more of a team, like everyone's on the same page, like they striving for the championship, whereas in your corporate life or everyday life, I think that you have to learn different traits. I mean, you're a leader, I guess, in your career now and leading teams of people. Is the leadership skills and qualities different in each area of life?
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
So the biggest difference about sport compared to corporate life that I found is that your performance in sport is completely transparent. Everyone can see if you're performing or not, and at what capability are you performing at, right? So and everyone can see it, and it's measurable, right? So we're in corporate life. A lot of it's behind the scenes. You don't have direct visibility into what everyone's doing, measurability of their performance, the strength of their relationships, that sort of thing. So that's quite hard to facilitate. So in corporate life, the effectiveness of quality communication and relationship is so important, because again, you can't visibly see all the time how people are performing. And in sport, you're practicing for one performance, whereas in corporate, well, you're performing every single day. So it's got that contrast as well. So but I found the effective communicators, and some people might think that they're effective communicators, but they're not. It's a really, really fine skill, and it takes, I think, a long amount of time and a lot of experience to deliver that, to deliver it well, to get people to follow you and then to buy into the purpose and that motivation, so that they're applying their own discipline in order to achieve the particular outcome.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's great, mate. Absolutely. I spoke to Josh Van Groningen, and he also mentioned the importance of having that clear sense of vision and purpose, which I think is tied to what you're saying in terms of communicating that and everyone working together. You mentioned Luke Longley as well. One of my questions for you was obviously he didn't feature in the Last Dance documentary, but for me, just a real humble guy, and I mean, walked past him at the Kings game, and he's always willing to say hello and that sort of thing. What kind of guy is he like, and what was he like to play with? I know you played with him in the 2000 Olympic Games as well.
Yeah, I love playing with him. I was a role player on the team that I participated in with him. But he was always super generous with his time and resources to support the benefit of the team. I've got a number of fond memories of him, with his arm around me, telling me, just some tidbits of advice. I remember the first training session, he told me, "Man, if you're driving through the key and I'm in the way, just put your knee in the middle of my chest and use me as a catapult."
What?
He goes,
Really?
he's like, Mike and Scotty do that all the time. So
wow.
You're a bit bouncy. Why don't you do the same thing?
Yeah, that's great.
So, that's an unusual sort of request, right? From a guy so on your team. But that's the level of human being he is. He's just a fantastic fella. And everyone asks me, "Oh, do you think he's really upset?" I go, "He wouldn't be upset about not being, involved that heavily in the Last Dance. He's not that kind of guy. He's not going to hold a grudge, and he knows how important he was through that time and how he contributed to their success. So that's all he needs to satisfy his own desire."
Yeah, absolutely. Just going back to the Olympics, we'll dive into a bit of basketball now. For me, that was one of the greatest Australian teams ever assembled. I know they talk about the NBA guys now, but like you had Longley just coming off the back of that Bulls run. Andrew Gaze just played in the NBA. Shane Heal just played in the NBA. I reckon that team was at its peak of its powers pretty much at that time. Proven success across the board there. You're a young guy on that team. What was that experience like? First of all, your first Olympics, but playing in Sydney, your home, well, not your home city, but in your home country. That must have been a phenomenal highlight and experience in your career.
Yeah, first off, it was I couldn't believe I was selected on the team, to be honest. Looking back now, I know how and why I made it, but at the time, I was a bit shocked, to be honest. I thought they were going to go a different way with some guys that already kind of solidified or made their their position on the team fairly secure. But I was thankful that Barry Barnes selected me to fill one of those roster spots, those coveted spots. But I remember leading up to it, I worked my absolute butt off to make sure that I was the best athlete on the team. So that's not the highest jumper, but all the physical testing stuff I dominated. So leading up into the selection of the team, there's 3 or 4 camps and selection criteria that you had to meet, and a lot of the physical testing, I killed it. So I made sure that I did all this preparation, prior to that to make sure that I would stand out physically,
right?
So that there wouldn't be any choice, I guess, that you got Andrew Gaze, playing the 2 spot, and I knew that's where I was going to be playing behind. What did I offer? What did I offer different? What was my differentiation that I could add value to the team? And for me, it was defense and athleticism. So Andrew wasn't a great defender, fantastic scorer, good leader, could run the play, but they were missing a defensive stopper on the wing and some athleticism in that position. So I knew I had to showcase that in order to being considered for the role.
Yeah, sure.
And then when I was selected, it was pretty tough process to go through. Selected, I was amazed. That I was going to be representing my country.
Yeah.
And then going to Sydney, it was just, I've never seen such national pride everywhere we went. If you're wearing the green and gold, people are just coming up to you, talking to you, just patting you on the back everywhere. I've never seen anything like it, and never experienced anything like it ever again in my life. So it was incredibly proud moment, and to be amongst those guys, you had Shane Heal, Andrew Gaze, Luke Longley, all played in the NBA, but you had Mark Brackey played in the NBA.
Yeah, that's right.
Paul Rogers had just played in the NBA. Chris Anstey just played in the NBA. I mean, you got Sam McKinnon, probably the one Australian guy that I can't believe never played at that level. He was probably better than most of us.
Yeah.
And Vlahov, it was
Ricky Grace.
Ricky Grace.
Yeah.
So the
Loaded.
team, it just keeps going on. So like you said, it was a fantastic team, so much skill. So to finish fourth was actually a bit upsetting because we knew that we had a really quality squad, that we could make a real crack at it. But at that time of basketball, these European powerhouses were just insane at how good they were too. So you look at how good our team was, but then you look at Russia and Yugoslavia, Spain, Italy, Lithuania. It was nuts. And France, they were stacked.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we had a really good squad, but so did they. It was in comparison to where the world was going in how good the standard was. But look, it was something I'll never forget. It was a great environment to be around. Playing in those stadiums was insane, and playing against the quality opposition, really cemented my understanding that actually I'm pretty good. On the world scale, I'm right there. So
it's great.
Yeah, it's good for my confidence as well.
Yeah, no doubt. Been a really great experience. You mentioned Europe. You had for a couple of seasons in Europe and Italy, I believe, and gave it a good crack. That was just prior to having a number of seasons in the NBL before that opportunity. What was that experience like going over to Europe and Italy and playing a couple of seasons over there?
Yeah, well, the funny thing, I was playing for the Melbourne team at the time, and they actually went into voluntary administration. They never recovered, so I didn't have a contract. So it just happened that I didn't have a contract, so I was just seeking other opportunities. And then my agent, it was always something I wanted to pursue. And my agent came through with an opportunity, so I just jumped at it. So my wife and we just had my son. He wasn't even one yet, and we went over there and we loved it. So the lifestyle was fantastic. The basketball was incredibly hard. So we trained every day, twice a day, and it wasn't just go around and shoot the ball around a little bit. It was super hard training,
right?
In the morning, and then siesta, and then come back and train super hard again. And then so it was the first team I played for. The second team I played for, we were in EuroLeague. So you're playing in the Italian Cup, Adriatic League, and EuroLeague. So you're playing every second or third day, and you're traveling, to different country all the time. So it became really hard on my wife. It was great for me because we didn't train as much, but we're playing all the time. But I'm never at home.
Yeah, exactly.
So you end up playing like an NBA schedule. You end up playing 90 games, or I think we played 86 games that year.
Wow, that's crazy.
So it was nuts, and it was the lightest I've ever been. You just couldn't put on weight.
Yeah.
Because you're just burning so many calories and traveling so much, it becomes pretty difficult. But we loved it. The experience was fantastic. And I was fortunate to go back again. Went to Croatia in 2005 after we won the third championship. Got an offer to go to Croatia. Really good deal for Cibona, big club, EuroLeague as well, and participated with them that season. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no doubt. You mentioned the Kings there. Your three-peat. You came back from Europe. You signed with the Sydney Kings. No doubt one of the highlights of your career as well. Just that period of time, you actually followed Brian Gorge in there. I know he gave you your first crack back at South Melbourne. Is that correct? In the NBL. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I was at college in the US, and I trained with the Melbourne Magic as a junior, like end of high school. I was playing like second tier, so I think it was CBL or CBA back then. And so we used to train and just do warm-ups with them. And then if he wanted some numbers, he would get some of the CBL guys to jump in and help out at training. And so when I was 17 or 18 sort of thing, and I was starting to progress and become a little bit more athletic and probably could compete at a high level athletically with the NBL guys, then a few of the CBL guys. So he invited my brother and I to train a little bit with them. So when I went to college, he already had an understanding of some of my capabilities, and I think he had an admiration for what I could potentially bring to the table. So when at the end of my college career, I ended up signing a 3-year deal with the Magic, and played then. And then, with Sydney, I was playing in Italy, and he said to me, "Oh, mate, I haven't seen you for a while. You know, I'm the coach of the Boomers. If you want to think about making the next Olympic team, I'm going to have to get a closer look at you."
Yeah.
So, we were actually ready to go. My wife was pregnant with the second child, so we were actually ready to come back. So we made the decision to come and join Sydney, and it was good timing. I mean, they just won a championship with Shane and Matt Nielsen primarily there, and Shane had moved on, so they were looking for that next piece of the puzzle, I guess, to support that the longevity of success there.
Yeah, I was talking to Bill Tomlinson recently about it, and he said, well, I made the point that you lose Shane Heal, Kavosi Franklin, Chris Williams, but then you pick up yourself, CJ Bruton, Ebiara. Like, it was just amazing crossover of talent. But you actually got injured that year from memory. It was a season-ending injury. How tough was that to miss out on that first championship, which would have been with the Kings? You won one with the Victoria Titans, obviously, or Southeast Melbourne Magic. But yeah, what was it like missing out that year on that second championship?
Yeah, devastating. You know, I got myself into really good shape. In Italy, there's not a whole lot of care about the individual, the athlete. So they don't put a whole lot of emphasis on your body and ensuring that you're at peak physical performance. If you burn out, they just get someone else in. So I put a lot of time in recovering from that and building my body ready again for the NBL season. And I was in Melbourne playing against the Tigers, and I dislocated my kneecap, and just tore a little bit of the tissue around there as well, and knocked some bone off the joint. So I had to have surgery, and I was done for the season. So fortunately or unfortunately, I'd ruptured my other patella tendon. I can't remember what year. I think it was 2000 or 2001 after the Olympics. And so I kind of knew what to anticipate from a knee injury. But I was kind of glad it wasn't as bad as the previous one.
Wow.
So it only kept me out for a few months, but unfortunately it kept me out for the finals campaign. But I was happy for the guys, but I was still pretty pissed off that I couldn't contribute to it. So, yeah,
absolutely. Would have been hard. No doubt built some resilience in you. But obviously you went on to win that third championship, grand final MVP, if you don't mind. So that's a pretty good achievement there. But just reflecting on that time with the Kings, and you had some success making the semi-finals. Just missed out 07-08 on the championship as well, losing to the Tigers. But just give us some insight into Brian Goorjian as a coach, because obviously he was at the forefront of it all. Great coach, great guy. You know him well from your time. He gave you your time down in Melbourne. He gave you your first crack at NBL basketball. What makes him such a great coach, and how come he stands out from the rest?
There's probably a few facets. So the first is he's the best communicator I've ever been around. So he's able to clearly articulate sense of mission, purpose, and then what's required out of your individual contribution. He's able to channel that, all those dimensions, and clearly communicate it in a broad sense, but also to the individual, which is important, obviously, in a team environment. So there's that aspect. Second is he's got an eye for talent. So he can pick these guys that are kind of rough diamonds, polishes them up over time, and is able to get the best out of them. And for me, I thought my ceiling was probably 2 or 3 steps or rungs lower than what I overachieved. But I mean, he was able to see, through some of my inabilities or skill gaps, and build on those and design, some years. We're talking about years of training in order to build on those skill gaps and even it out, and then build a pretty good basketballer off the back of that. So he's done that you know, you that time and time again. You know, Sam, Chris, myself, Dremick. You know, there's a number of guys that have gone through. Andrew Parkinson, Tony Ronaldson. You know, there's a heap of them. And then the third aspect is he makes it fun. You know, he joked around a lot. He was a player, so he kind of understood the demands of what the requirements were on a day-to-day basis. So going to training every day was fun. You know, he made it competitive, and you know, he'd joke around, and you know, we'd be cacking up at him. He'd make a fool of himself. You know, quite regularly. He's pretty vulnerable like that. So and he's, you know, quite open. And he was always teaching himself. He's always learning. He's always picking, you know, best practice from all over the globe, different sports, and introducing them and trialing stuff with us. And got no doubt that's why he was, you know, super successful, and that's why I love him. You know, he's you know, he was like a second father figure to me.
Oh, that's great, mate. You mentioned father figures. One thing I appreciate about you when I, you know, grew up looking up to you in many ways was you surrounded yourself with, you know, wise heads. You know, Brian Gorge in there, Gary Speckman, the chaplain. There was many people that you had. You know, how important is that to have those sort of voices near you that you can draw on, but also sort of tell you sometimes you need to be told what you don't like to hear. So how important is that to, like, talking about mentors or whatever the case may be? How important is it to have those people in your life right there when you need them the most?
Yeah, I think it comes down to trust. And you know, I was fortunate enough that I, you know, could discern who I could trust within my circle, and if I didn't have enough people in there, then I would invite someone into that proximity that I think could be beneficial not only to me, but that there was a mutual benefit there. And then you know, again, I was fortunate that, you know, that Brian, well, I felt at the time that he had a personal interest in me outside of not only what I could do on the basketball court. And I think that's a really important lesson for coaches that want to get their best out of their players.
Sure, yeah.
Because I would go above and beyond what I was asked to do in training and diet and that sort of stuff. You know, so those intangibles that actually push you to the next level, that you know, it's going to be a conscious decision by the player to do that or not do that, and it's, you know, typically a trust issue that I trusted him with my career. You know, I trusted him in the feedback he gave me, and sometimes I didn't like hearing what he had to say, but I trusted it, and we would debate it and, you know, move on. And then, you know, then there's, you know, the player is only, you know, 20% of who you are. You know, that's what I did. You know, that was my job. And I go home and I'm with my family, and, you know, I realised that I, you know, was a young man, married, couple of children, with, you know, on a you know, got some money, got some notoriety, and if you're not seeking counsel around that aspect of life, that can spiral out of control. So get some wise heads to contribute, and invite them to contribute into your life for counsel and support. I recognise was equally important, not only in the basketball side, but also life outside of that. So that's why you know, I was always around Gary Speckman, or I had a couple of other mentors in my life that I would just bounce ideas off and converse with when required.
That's great, mate. I know, just to touch on that, that opportunity you had with Gary to share your story after a game. Again, that was a great experience for me, just seeing you having the opportunity to share your faith, and the purpose behind that was to share that aspect of hope that you have in your life, and you're able to do that after a game with all the fans hanging around, with another bunch of other athletes as well. And what was that experience like, and how did that come about?
Well, it came about. So first off, it was I was like shaking in my boots. I was really scared.
Yeah,
I was fearful, right?
Yeah.
But it came about when Gary and I had been doing some outreach stuff in the community for a couple of years, and then I was just challenging me, like, no, let's do something different. let's do something on a bigger scale. So we're doing all these little ones. Let's think about doing something bigger scale. So then he actually came and said, what about if we do this? I was like, oh, I wasn't talking that big. But anyway, so we spoke about it. And I said, actually, yeah, we could do this. We could pull it off. So we went to the club and we went to the board and we said, we want to do this. This is the project we want to work on. We want to hold a session with the crowd, deliver my testimony before or after the game, potentially after the game. But we know what you're going to ask, and we think that we can reach 100 churches around Sydney and invite them to come to the game, to buy a ticket and come to the game, and invite a friend to come to the game. So there's benefit for you for ticket sales and merchandise and having people in the stands. But then we want to open that up to an opportunity to invite them to stay, and then we would share after the game. So we actually thought a bit of like a business plan that we pitched to them, and they loved it.
That's great.
They thought, they said they would endorse it because primarily they knew of my faith background and the position that took in my life, and they wanted to support that, but also they saw a business opportunity. So it worked well with them. So we worked with Bible Society to just work out how we could scale the event to support anyone that would require any help.
Yeah.
And then Gary worked, what we were going to work on to position after the game. And I remember actually, like the day of the game, or the day of the event, we went to shoot around, and I was all ready to go. Like I, rehearsed what I was going to do and whatever. I got home, and I was so afraid.
Yeah.
Like I was almost overwhelmed that I was going to call Gary and say, "Man, I can't do it.
Wow.
You're going to have to step in and do this."
Yeah.
And then I remember, like, normally I would eat, like we go to shoot around. I'd eat lunch, come home, sleep, get up and go to the game, right? So I'd eat and I couldn't sleep because I was just so restless. Like I was just like, I'm really worried about this and anxious about it. And then I remember watching a show on SBS or Channel 2 or something like that around jihadism, right? And it quickly just clicked to me that there's people out there willing to kill themselves and others for their beliefs and faith. Why am I worried about sharing mine? That's such a good news story.
Yeah.
And just talking about it.
Yeah.
So that my mind just shifted and I got at ease about it. And then went to the game, we played. And then after the game, so I went into the rooms, we won, luckily, and went into the rooms, and so Gorge was like, just talking about the team and our performance, and then he said, "All right, guys, let's go." And I was like, "What?" He goes, "Oh, we're supporting you."
Wow.
So as I walked out, I got the whole team behind me, and they all sat behind me on the court as I went up and did my piece and did my testimony and altar call. So I felt really, really blessed and supported by my teammates. And I mean, they all knew I was a Christian. I'd always invite them to pray and that sort of stuff. And but I don't know if any of them had heard my full testimony. So a couple of them had, but definitely not all of them. So it was just it was a great experience, and
definitely.
Yeah, something I always look fondly on.
Yeah, no doubt, mate. It was a great event. There's no doubt about that. Being there was a special thing. But one of the misconceptions about, I guess, Christian faith, whatever, is that, when you become a Christian, to put your faith in the Christian faith, I guess, that everything's, smooth sailing, everything's good, but that's, it can be further from the truth in terms of life. And we've talked about the good times with the Kings, the championships and all that, but there was also some tough times. And the first one of those was the demise of the Kings and the financial hardships that they went through. I know a lot of the players have said they can't forgive particular people for that situation. What was that situation like going through as a player, and how much did it affect you at the time?
It was really hurtful. we'd sacrificed a lot to move back to Sydney and be a part of the Kings organisation. So I felt betrayed almost when it went under. And I thought it was really poorly managed, to be honest. And being probably the focal point of the playing group, I felt an enormous responsibility to engage with administrators and all the key stakeholders to try and salvage what we could of the scenario and to help navigate the best way through it on behalf of the playing group. So I kind of acted as that liaison between the playing group and the administration and legal stakeholders that were involved. So it was incredibly difficult, really taxing. We were fortunate that it was at the right time of the year where we could still finish out the season with the support of the NBL. So I think the NBL did a pretty good job of helping us through that issue and that matter. But I could go on for a couple of hours about that. But I think in sport in general, particularly elite sport and professional sport, that's always a reality, right? That you're dealing with ownership groups and sponsors and public. So there's always something that could go wrong. Again, I mentioned about my injury. So I've had, I think, 8 or 9 knee operations, shoulder reconstruction. So at some point, whether it's going to be club going under, getting injured, missing out on a contract, being cut, finishing a career, at some point the sport's going to let you down. Right? At some point, it's inevitable. It's going to happen. So are you equipped to deal with that? And my faith definitely helped me get through those scenarios. And I educated myself through dealing with a few of them, those issues, the downtimes. So when they did happen, I didn't drop as far. You just quickly recover and you move on to the next step. And with the Kings, dealing with that, I'd never been through that before, and being intimately involved in that process. Unfortunately, the club that I finished up with the next year, exactly the same thing happened. They didn't know what to do, and I go, guys, I've been through this before. I know exactly what to do. I'll if you're willing to trust me, I'll help navigate us through that. So I was really fortunate that I had been through it before, because otherwise no one else would have known what to do. So we were able to finish the season again. Otherwise we would have been dead, and you've got 12 guys with no income, and huge impact on their families. But we were able to salvage the season and get through, and then the guys could get contracts from other clubs from there. But it was I look back on that and go, there's a purpose for everything.
That's right.
It was good learning. I'm not actually that bitter about it, to be honest. Like you just move on, and life throws some curveballs at you sometimes, and you've got to deal with them as best you can and forget and move on.
It's phenomenal. I was going to ask you about the Sydney Spirit, and exact same experience there. Just before I touch on that a bit more, what people may have forgotten is that you actually signed with the South Dragons in between that, but you didn't. The contract didn't eventuate or whatever. You followed Gorgon down there. For me, to say, talk about contrast. Here's them winning the championship. You could have been a part of that, but you went through that with the Sydney Spirit. So what happened there where you couldn't sign with the South Dragons again?
So at the end of the Kings year, so that was start of 2008. So it was an Olympic year. I dislocated my shoulder in the semi-finals, and then ultimately ended up rupturing the ligament in my shoulder.
Right.
The rotator tendon, and I didn't know it at the time. And then I'd signed with the Dragons, and then my shoulder still wasn't coming good. So I got the scan, and it showed the key issues that I needed surgery, so it would keep me out of the Olympics as well. But as soon as I required surgery, I advised the Dragons, and part of the requirement of the contract was I had to pass a physical, and so they reneged on the contract, and rightly so. I wouldn't have expected them to proceed based on an injured player, and it was I was unsure. The prognosis was unsure whether or not I would be able to participate in that season. Whether or not it was going to be 6 months, 12 months, 3 months, it was still a bit of question mark around the time to recover.
Mm.
I backed myself that I'd get back onto court that season.
Mm.
I think I did. It took me 8 months, I think, full recovery from surgery, but it was only halfway through the season, or maybe a third through the season, and I finished out the season with the Sydney team. But after that, and then when the Sydney team went under, I knew that the body was starting to break down more frequently. Just had the shoulder reconstruction, kept me out of the Olympics for my third.
Yeah.
Two teams in 2 years went under. Oh, mate, I just need to walk away.
Yeah. It's a tough trot, mate. Wow.
Yeah.
Tough 2 years.
Yeah.
Just quickly on Bevo, you had the opportunity to be coached by him at the Sydney Spirit. Had a chat with him a little while back, and got a lot of regard for him as a coach and as an individual, as a person. What was that experience like? Although the team didn't go that great that year, and the situation that unfolded around you was tough. Still a great group of guys that you had there at the Spirit, and before that the Razorbacks. And what was that like? Being coached by Bevo and being in that environment.
Yeah, I had a little bit to do with Bevo prior to that, but never to that extent. So always admired him and for what he was doing in the fraternity, and his involvement with a lot of the younger guys that I'd experienced their time with on the Boomers that had been coached by him. He spoke really highly of him. So I was excited about joining forces with him. And then when everything went pear-shaped, I saw his character come out in trying to keep the momentum supporting the team. It's incredibly hard when there's no guarantee of salaries for these guys.
Yeah, that's right.
And they all had the option to drop and go and get opportunities elsewhere. But his capability to keep that core group together and continue on really shone through. And without his involvement, it doesn't happen. Again, I kind of knew what to do because I'd been there with the Kings. But if you don't have someone, shoulder and arm in arm with you, it just doesn't work. And he shouldered so much of the weight to try and to get that through. And so I've got a lot of respect for him, what he was able to do in that. And so, to be honest, the basketball side, I wouldn't even, it doesn't even come into conversation when I talk about Bevo, because it was more around who he was as an individual, helping these young men navigate through this extremely difficult period. And I knew it was the end of my career, and I'd only, was only going to play half the year anyway. So the basketball stuff is whatever, but his personality and trustworthiness, and a lot of respect for Bevo during that time, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Touched on the club falling apart. One of the reasons it was able to get through the season was because of Andrew Bogut putting his own money into the organisation. Again, showing his passion for the sport as well. And I believe you roomed with Andrew at the 2004 Olympics. You're a bit of a mentor to him because he was a young guy back then, 19 years of age. Did you see the potential in him back then when you roomed with him and had that experience at the 2004 Olympics?
Yeah, and I'll touch on the other aspect first. So the fact that he contributed to the cause, he didn't contribute enough considering his income. And actually, Bevo and I went and met with that many sponsors to ensure that they were going to continue their support. Like we met with everyone just to appeal to them, and they were all great. But I've known Bogut since he was like 15, 14. So he grew up, actually played for the same domestic club. And he used to come and train with us, and in the school holidays, he's like 6'7", 6'8" at 15.
Wow.
And Anstey used to just go at him too, like just to he was, you could tell he was going to be big, and he's lanky. He didn't have a whole lot of weight behind him then, obviously, but so they used to put him in the post and just try and defend low post guys, and Anstey would just demolish him and elbow him in the face, and and no prisoners. If you're gonna compete on this stage, you better be ready, sort of thing. And then just to see his involvement over time, and then his college life, he'd come back throughout college and still train with us, and you just see him and his improvement. And I remember seeing when he was at AIS as well. You go, wow, this kid's pretty special, and he just kept growing. And then you see him at University of Utah, and he's just insane. He was so good.
Mm.
There's no, even back, you look back now at the draft, considering who was in his draft class, you're probably still going to pick him, top 3.
Mm-hmm.
He had some injuries, but he's had a fantastic career. So I mean, he was exceptional.
Mm.
And I ran with him for about 4 years. So at the Olympics, but also I think 2 years prior when he first made the Boomers, and 2 years after, and then the World Champs. So we spent a lot of time together, and obviously similar. Grew up in a similar environment in Melbourne, and his family, and had been around him for a while. So yeah, he was great. He was awesome. He was really professional about the way he approached the game and the tournaments, and deep thinker. There's a little bit more to him than meets the eye, but yeah, he's had an exceptional career, and I was incredibly blessed to be part of, or to contribute to a small part of that. And I think Gorge originally, when they was doing the room list, he goes, "I'm going to put you with Bogues. Can you just make sure you look after him?" And when he was first on the team, so I just showed him what the expectation was and standards of being a Boomer, and he took to it pretty quickly and then started dominating. So
it's amazing. Great experiences. Well, last question for you, mate. Could speak to you all day, but that 2004 Olympics, just behind you, you've got a picture of being dunked on. You're blocking it at the moment, but there's LeBron, young LeBron. And you had the opportunity to go up against LeBron, a young LeBron, Dwayne Wade, Carmelo Anthony, I think, was on that team as well, Allen Iverson, Tim Duncan. What an experience that would have been. But in particular, LeBron and Dwayne Wade, no doubt saw the potential in him even in that game.
I mean, he's 18 when he dunked on me.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a physical specimen.
Yeah.
It's just insane, and you could just tell he had, just all the equipment to do whatever he needed to do. But it was a skill that wasn't quite there, so he couldn't shoot. That well at that stage, and he was still like a piece to the puzzle instead of that dominating force. Whereas I think the hardest guy I've ever had to guard was probably 2 was Allen Iverson. He just he's about 5'10". You don't realize how small he is.
Wow.
And he's just so whip it like quick, so quick, so zippy. And I thought I was pretty quick for my size, and he could get anywhere he wanted on the court at any time, and you couldn't stop him. It was just amazing. And then the other guy's just Carmelo Anthony. He's another 2 inches taller than LeBron, and with depth of range, and just unbelievable one-on-one skills. So they're the 2 guys that I look back and go, well, they're pretty hard.
Yeah, no doubt.
Actually, I've got a good story.
So, go for it.
Mark Worthington subs into the game at the World Championships in 2006.
Yeah.
And I think he subbed out Glenn Saville. So I'm the 2 guard, and Wortho comes in at the 3 guard spot. And so the 2 and 3 at the time for the US who we were playing against was Carmelo and LeBron.
Yeah.
So Wortho subs in, he goes, who do you want, Carmelo or LeBron? I'm like, mate, it doesn't really matter, right? Like, you guard whoever. Yeah, you guard one of them, and we'll just switch if they come, they're screaming at each other. But I remember that going, good point. It doesn't really matter.
Wow, what a predicament to be in. Pretty amazing stuff. Well, mate, you had a great career. You've done a lot of great, great career in basketball, but a lot of great things off the court as well, mate, and a lot of respect for you. So, thank you for sharing those experiences with us today. And look forward to, hopefully seeing you around soon, eh?
No worries, man. Thanks, Dan. Good to connect, mate.
Yeah.